Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll now hear from Mr. Blake Andis, candidate for sheriff.
Hello, thank you all for coming this evening. I'm Sheriff Blake Andis. For the ones that don't know me, I'm a native here of Washington County. I was born and raised, much like some of these other ones, on a small farm, tobacco, cattle, and hay. Ended up going to Abingdon High School. Met my high school sweetheart there. We were married about 33 years, and I lost her back in the summer. But we successfully raised two wonderful children. We're still Christian members at Greendale Chapel Church. After high school, I went to Virginia Highlands Community College, got an associate's degree there in not political justice, but criminal justice. Ended up going on to Bluefield University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice there. I attended University of Louisville, the Southern Police Institute, and graduated with administration. I'm actually the first sheriff in Washington County to ever get the Virginia Sheriff's Institute certification. I've worked 35 years serving the citizens here in Washington County. I worked for 5 sheriffs previously. I was chief of police at Virginia Highlands Community College. And I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity.
As private security. My 27 years of law enforcement, over 20 was spent with the Virginia State Police, where I served in the Richmond, Roanoke areas, and then here in Southwest Virginia. I'm very involved in the community through ministry outreach. I serve as the president of the Washington County Prevention Coalition, as well as on the advisory committee for Washington County Drug Court, and then also partner with United Way. Some of the things that I'm really looking at bringing back to our community is putting our law enforcement back in the communities where they belong. I've got a long list of goals, and one of those, the first one, is to revitalize our neighborhood watch programs. It is only by together that we can serve and work and bring safety back to our communities. By revitalizing our neighborhood watch programs, we'll be more effective in solving crimes. Also restructuring the agency to be more effective in our law enforcement services. Being more proactive with our drug task force efforts. Bring more transparency and accountability to you, the taxpayer, with the Sheriff's Office budget that we will cut wasteful spending. I want to implement some zero-cost programs. It doesn't cost you a dime. It will not cost you a dime for us to care for our children in schools. The Handle with Care program is a great program that we can implement. Zero cost is just a communication program that lets law enforcement in the schools know that there may be a child who has certain needs that we need to meet. We look at our SNIDS program, Special Needs in Distress, another zero-cost program we can implement to help community members who may be caring for someone with disabilities. I'm Rex Carter, and I ask for your vote, either early voting or November the 7th, to serve as your next sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. We'll now hear from Mr. Webb, candidate for treasurer.
Katie Harris, I am a lifetime resident of Mendota in Washington County, and my questions are primarily regarding Mendota, okay? And it's for the Sheriff's Department. I wonder what your views on a ketamine drug clinic wanting to come to the Mendota area are.
I'd like to know, there's a possibility of a ketamine drug clinic coming to Mendota and what your views would be on that. So for the Sheriff's Office. Ketamine.
During my career, I've investigated narcotics, done undercover work and all that. Ketamine is not a good drug. It's a cat tranquilizer. I don't believe in putting a ketamine clinic in Mendota because if you build it, they will come, and it ain't Mendota residents. And it is, we see it. The transfer back and forth, going to the Suboxone clinics and all that. I don't know if there's any kind of medical. I've never heard of ketamine being a drug to get others, to get them off of the other drugs.
Thank you, Mr. Andis. Mr. Carter?
A couple of questions I would first have on that is, what would be the need of having a clinic like that here? What's the research on it? I agree with Sheriff Andis. I don't know what the need would be for that. Are there other resources that we could seek to help people? We've got a huge issue in our county with meth and fentanyl and ketamine clinic. I just don't see what the need would be to have to support that. I would be more interested in let's stop the drug trafficking, let's stop the human trafficking, the sex trafficking, let's address the issues that are hurting our communities more than the issue of perhaps this ketamine clinic.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
I'll back up a little. Fred Newman, questions for both sheriff's candidates. What new initiatives or services have you implemented in the past 3 years toward protecting and serving the citizens of our county?
Sheriff Andis. Okay. Can you ask Mr. Newman, can you ask your question one more time?
Yes, what services have been implemented toward protecting and serving the citizens of Washington County?
So, Sheriff Andis. And then Mr. Carter, if you could be on deck for that question, I'll say, what would you, if elected? So you have an opportunity for that question.
We've had numerous services. Of course, during the start of my tenure as sheriff, we went through a learning experience. There was a little thing called COVID, and it shut everything down. So we had to learn a whole new way of getting services to people. If you were down here in Mendota at that time, you saw a deputy out here at this community center, same as the one in Hyder's Gap. We came to you because nobody was getting out, and that's how we served our bosses. As far as services in general, we've added 4 more patrol officers to our patrol to better serve our communities. We've implemented the Marcus Alert deputies, and what that is basically they respond directly to people in mental health distress. That takes the efforts off the patrol division, and we have a mental health worker right in the car with them that responds also. And this is providing services directly to those individuals. We've also implemented a CTAC position. We've got several deputies there, and it alleviated all the towns from sitting with these emergency custody orders and temporary detaining orders in these hospitals, freeing them up to provide their services to these towns. Thank you.
Mr. Carter?
As I mentioned earlier, some of the things that we need to look at, some of my goals, special needs in distress, the SNIDS program. If you are the caretaker of someone who is perhaps disabled, maybe having some type of mental health issue, disorder at home, you're the caretaker, then I would ask you to voluntarily call the sheriff's office. If you'd like to give us that information, give us your address. And if we are dispatched to that address, that would pop up in the system as a SNIDS address. So in other words, the deputies responding know more about how they can respond better. You see, we've got to care more about our people in our communities rather than having a political agenda. And by doing so, if a deputy knows they're going into a residence where someone may be bipolar, or someone may have autism, somewhere on the spectrum, then rather than going in, lights blaring and all this stuff and kicking doors in, we can go in with a better and a different approach. Therefore, we need to increase training for our deputies on how you handle mental health cases. It's about caring more about people. School resource officers, that's a great asset for our community. But what about those that are out here on patrol? In the previous administration, there was a program that every deputy, if you drove by a school, you stopped and you went in and you checked into the school, even though you already had a resource officer. Why can we not do that? I think we need to. We need to care more about our schools. I also have an idea that I want to implement with the school system, work with Dr. Perigin and the school board about color coding hallways or making it more easier for deputies to arrive if, heaven forbid, something were to happen and you go down the blue hallway, the green hallway, the yellow hallway. It's all about working smarter rather than working harder. Increasing our patrols, of course, by restructuring the work schedule right now. We can increase visibility within our communities, and a lot of areas seem to be forgotten. And so one of the things that we need to do is getting back to working smarter and getting people out here, getting our deputies back out in the communities where they need to be. So just a few goals that I have for us.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Ms. Monin?
My name is Heather Howard, and I am a fourth-generation resident of Washington County. I grew up out in the Window area. My question is going to be for Rex Carter. Mr. Carter, one of the things that I think everyone nowadays is particularly concerned about is how all of you all are spending taxpayer dollars. And in Washington County, the Sheriff's Office has the biggest budget, close to the tune of $10 million now. And you mentioned in your statement that you were going to be transparent about how you spent our money. And what I want to know from you is, if we elect you sheriff, how are you going to ensure transparency with our $10 million?
Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Great question. She is correct. The current budget for the Sheriff's Office is close to $10 million, $2.5 million more than what it was last year. Now, within that, that incorporates some of the raises for the deputies, some overtime, which is great, and that's what they deserve, and they need that. However, you do bring up a good point. We need transparency and accountability. One of the things that I've already started working on and putting into place is a citizens advisory board to have more oversight. It is no secret, Sheriff Andis could address this in 2015 and in 2019 for the last almost 8 years. He said that he would have an advisory board made up of communities from the citizens from the community to help oversee operations to make sure everything is on the up and up. But that has yet to be done. So I'm proposing a 5 to 7 member panel made up of people from the business sector, accounting, bank, private sector. Because here's the thing, how can we justify wasteful spending in law enforcement when we need those funds to be applied at better places within the budget, within the department, to be more effective? For example, over the last couple of years, the DRMO program, the Sheriff's Office has accumulated over $3.3 million worth of military surplus equipment that is sitting up behind the Sheriff's Office, but yet what are we doing with it? $15,000 was spent in a line item called purchase services to pay for deputies to leave the county to go pick that military equipment up and bring it back. Just a couple of weeks ago, a couple of deputies went to Missouri to pick up a flatbed trailer to bring back to the Sheriff's Office. I don't know why. I cannot answer that question. But I can tell you one thing. It is your money. It's not the Sheriff's Office money. It is your money, and you deserve to know what's happening with it, and you will.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Andis, would you like to respond?
As far as addressing the line items in the budget, the majority of the money that comes into the county, it's allocated through the state. Probably $9 million is through the state, and that's for 112 employees that we have. The transparency, we answer to the Board of Supervisors. I use them as bosses and advisories as far as how your money's spent. Those items are in line items. It's online. You're welcome to come by the Sheriff's Office or call us, whatever. We'll give those to you at any time. Some of the DRMO things that they were talking about, that's one of the projects that's been going on since 1990. Sheriff's offices and police departments, there's about 9,000 throughout the United States that cooperate in this program. And during COVID, if you didn't know, it was hard to get a vehicle. If you come by the Sheriff's Office, we'll be happy to show you. We've got about 12 pickup trucks that's marked. We use them as patrol cars. We've got vans. We've got undercover drug vans that we use. And it's about probably $6 or $8 million worth of equipment that we secured from the military. If you look at the past president, how many millions of dollars he left over in Afghanistan. That's the equipment that we're getting, and it's costing us pennies on the thousands of dollars that we're getting here in the county. And then, once we get done with that, we're able to sell that equipment and dispose of it. And we've got a lot of equipment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andis.
My question is for Rex Carter, candidate for sheriff. If I gave you a book, a Christian book on the doctrine of the lesser magistrates, would you accept it from me? Good.
All right. Since that was a short question, come on up. So this will be our last question.
I guess this is for Mr. Hernandez and the sheriff candidates. Okay. Janet Meadows. I live out here and I also operate a small business. And honestly, my main concern out here is safety. I worry about fire and I worry about the potholes and I have to drive over in my shuttle. I worry about the bridges that are hanging. Okay. I worry about all that stuff. And honestly, we're going to have growing traffic, growing visitors, we hope, with the opening of the trail. What can be done to help us feel less forgotten and feel a little bit safer? What can be done to help us out here? Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez?
That's a great question, and honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons I ran for the Board of Supervisors, because this district was forgotten. I'll tell you this quick story. When I was running for this office, one of the places I went was the Goodson Kinderhook Fire Department. And I walked around in there, there was ambulances, fire trucks, pumpers, and I noticed that every single truck had an expired inspection sticker. So I went to the chief, Don Venable, and I said, why are all these inspection stickers expired? He said, look at the tires. Every single one of those vehicles had tires with metal sticking out. They couldn't pass inspection. And one of the first things I did, and it wasn't hard to do, I had a lot of support because I had a really good cause. The first thing I did on the Board of Supervisors was come up with $4,300 so we could put tires on every single one of those vehicles. But you're absolutely right. Roads, broadband, water, this district has often been forgotten because it's rural, right? Out of sight, out of mind. Sometimes there's things that we can directly control. I'll let the sheriff's candidates talk about law enforcement. We've had a lot of discussions about law enforcement and supporting and funding law enforcement. Then there's other things, for example, like roads. Roads and bridges, swinging bridges here in Mendota, it's a big issue. I can tell you that VDOT, Richmond, they don't want to support those bridges. They've been to us several times and said, can we just give up on these bridges? Because they're the purview of VDOT. So while we don't control VDOT, we have some great friends, I think, that support this district, and Todd and William Wampler and soon be Israel O'Quinn, these delegates and state senators, that help us with VDOT. And so we've it's a really interesting relationship with VDOT. They don't have to do anything we ask, but when we get calls, when we get requests for those kinds of things, for example, safety. And by the way, roads are a huge safety issue. We had a car go off Mendota Road here and into the river not long ago, well, a couple of years ago because of a bad road. And it's God's grace that fellow didn't drown. But having a great relationship, a good working relationship with VDOT, even though they're not part of the county, is really, really important because we need them to help us with these roads. But I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. Great question.
Mr. Carter?
Ms. Mills, I appreciate your question. I've been involved in small business as well, and of course, background in law enforcement, so I understand that there is always the question of safety. How can we do better in our areas of the county that seem to have been forgotten? Here toward Lynchburg, Tumbling Creek, Fort Valley, Colorado, over toward White House, we've got a 600 square mile county. And how is it that on night shift, if you were to listen to any of the scanner, the patrols, you would find 3, 4. If you are luckily blessed, you may have 5 out working, but typically it's about 4 people or so. And to cover a 600 square mile county, how can we effectively meet the needs of safety if we're spread that thin? You can't do it. Response times are anywhere 30 minutes, an hour and a half. It's unacceptable. I'm looking at proposing a restructured schedule that will allow overlapping of the evening shift, the midnight shift, so we'll have twice as many people out at any one time without having to dip into overtime funds or anything like that. We're going to have more of our administration out working as well. It's not going to be top heavy. It's going to be everybody showing up to work. Bottom line, you have a badge and a gun, you go and you work. You answer that radio, you answer that call, you check on the schools. It's also looking at implementing our neighborhood watch programs, revitalizing them. Where have they been? I understand COVID, I get that, but crime still happens even if people are sick. Drugs activity is still going on even if people are sick. I understand that. But law enforcement doesn't stop just because COVID shows up. If anything, law enforcement needs to step up, and that's what we're going to do in this administration. Should you elect me for sheriff, we're stepping up our patrols, we're getting everybody out here, and we're going to meet the needs. We're going to do it very well. Thank you, Ms. Meadows, for that question.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Andis.
Thank you. We've been prepared as far as the sheriff's office is concerned for this for quite a while. I know there's a fire tower up here on the mountain, and we've got communication on it. We put that up there a couple of years ago because it's a little out of the way out here. And you all have internet access that points down to here from up there. So we actually invested, put a two-way radio communication up there so we could cover this area because we were having issues also. Some of the things that we do and are going to do as far as covering the trail is some bike patrols. We have various ATVs that we can respond in a accident or any kind of services needed. We also, through this DRMO program that they're talking about, we secured a tractor that helps to maintain this trail that we've gave to the county services. And since it's now being taken over and it's wide open, the special events, all those will be covered. I know we have runs and everything else that comes down here. And in the summer, we're planning on converting some of the school resource officers that's out of school into these areas so that we can cover them for all the visitors that we're having in the summer.
Thank you, Mr. Andis.
For my time at Emory and Henry College, where I graduated, ended up graduating with a degree in 3 majors, I was still always intrigued by being a student. A couple of years ago, I took some classes through Harvard University for certificate classes in leadership. I never quit learning. I never quit applying myself. Whether it's community service projects or whether it's education, whether it's law enforcement. And one of the things that I'm asking you to consider is the professionalism, the education, the experience, the total package. What we need in Washington County is a sheriff and a leader that is transparent and accountable to you, the taxpayer, the services that you deserve. You need that. And you need to have someone who is willing to answer your questions straightforward every time you call, whether the answer is good or bad. You deserve that. And so I feel like you need a sheriff who will take the leadership role, step up, step forward. We're not hiding, we're not putting anything aside, but we'll answer the questions. I cannot answer the questions you may have about all the lawsuits that's going on right now. I cannot answer the questions about all the DRMO equipment and why it's sitting around and we're paying for it. I can't answer all those questions. But come January 1, 2020, or 2024, come that time, I'll be more than glad to answer any question you have, to answer to you, the people, because you are the ones that matter. You're the ones that put all of us in a position to answer to you. And so I ask for your vote. I'm running as an independent because we do not need politics in law enforcement, because everyone deserves the services that are available. Each and every person needs that. Thank you. I appreciate your vote. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Mr. Andis.
It's a great pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you all for listening. I know you've been fed a lot of information tonight. And we're not going to get to answer all your questions. Please call. It's your sheriff's office. Call anytime. Dispatch has my phone number, and I'm up 24 hours a day, pretty much. We have, and I am certainly proud of my men and women that has been with me this 3 years and 8 months. It is a super sheriff's office. We've added more patrol deputies. We've added more school resource officers, more specialized training. I know there was mental health that came up. They've got that. They've actually got the active shooter. One officer. They do not wait to go in on an active shooter. That officer is sacrificing their life if they have to go protect whoever. We have started the most aggressive drug enforcement that ever has been in this county. You're gonna, if you don't want to, you'll see that. If you have any questions on it, call. We've definitely been busy. We've had 8 murders, and they're all solved. I want to thank you for letting the sheriff's office work for you. I'm asking for your vote, and so that we can keep Washington County a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. And please, get you a thing. We're proud of these.
Thank you, Mr.